Well, greetings and felicitations, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. Again, nothing to write home about. It's just a pre-show for a couple of minutes. We got 2 more minutes, and we go less than 2 minutes. We go live over on Odyssey Radio, ODYSYradio.com. Go on over there to hear just the audio version of this show. It's radio. And those of you over on the radio that normally listen over there, or if you want to see the show in its video simulcast, come on over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. Welcome to the people who are starting to gather out there. I see your numbers out there, but I don't see your faces or your names yet. But welcome. Good to have you here. I'm making sure everything is up to snuff. That we're broadcasting. Testing 1 2, testing 3 4. Let me double check my settings here. Oh, my light's very low, and my light's very yellowy looking again. That's weird. I have to go all the way around there to adjust it, so I'll leave it the way it is. Maybe bring this one up a little bit. There we go. Oh, that's better. It's still yellowy, but it's better. All right, let's see the audio. Is on my USB audio codec 0.8 BB 2902. Perfect. I'm going to close this window a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. This is gone. This is also not need to be there. So there you go. It's 9:02:56. Here we go. Going dark. Going live to the show. Stand by.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey, folks, welcome to the Intrepid radio program. I am your host, Scotty Roberts, because this is my show. And I'm sure glad it's your show, too. I'm sure glad you're all here taking part in it. Thanks for coming by. Those of you over in the chat room, I see Susie Q and Morgan Snow already. Welcome to the program. And everybody else who's hanging out there, come on in. It's a Friday night, and we're continuing our little excursion into the JINN. We'll do this for a little bit more and we'll be done with this and we'll move on to some other topics. But I'm finding that the JINN and subjects like this are very cool, but there's not a lot we can pull out of it personally. I like the show to be meaningful. So we're going to do this until we get through some of the material I want to get through and study the JINN a little bit. Learn a bit about them. Then I want to get into doing a little more personalized stuff, things that mean something to me, mean something to you, and we pull stuff out of it. It could range from politics. What about that State of the Union address? I'm sorry, that campaign lecture. They made one mistake. The Republicans are always a day late and a dollar short. You know what they should have done? Knowing that Donald Trump is the presumptive GOP candidate, there's no way for anybody else to surpass him in the GOP. He's the presumptive candidate. It just won't get named until the convention. They should have had Donald Trump doing the reaction to Joe Biden last night, because the television stations, all the news stations, are bound to, they have to play the response. And so if they air the one side, they got to air the other side. That's the law. And so it would have been a good way for Trump to get his message out. In contrast, not that he doesn't already, but in contrast, live contrast to Joe Biden, and it would have been picked up right away. So it's too bad they didn't do that. I think they probably already had Miss Britt all lined up, and she was good. She was nice. She was cute. She was a mom, a senator. I don't think she had the power, though, that she could have had. It was a little more staged than it should have been. This is what the Republicans do. They do that kind of thing. They think that they needed to have her on because she would speak to the high percentage of white moms out there that don't traditionally vote Republican. So they put her on to appeal to the moms. But we found over the years that doesn't really help. That doesn't really work. They needed to have somebody to speak to the issues directly, not to put on a little dog and pony show. So she was good. Credits to her. She's young. She's in the Senate. But I think having Trump on would have been much better. But that's a woulda, shoulda, coulda. It's already well past that. And State of the Union addresses. What gets said at those, they kind of pass rather quickly, unless there are antics like Pelosi tearing up Donald Trump's speech when he handed it to her, because they always hand it to the Speaker of the House and the Vice President. Things like that stick around. Let's see. Morgan Snow says, I've been listening to the 1001 Nights and have noticed a lot of copping off heads. Oh, yeah, that's what they did. And the JINN for sure. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about Islam tonight and delve into the JINN in Islam, which is really, you want to say it is their origin, but they did, as we have found already, they already existed prior to that. Now, I'm going to see once more if I can just adjust my colors a little bit. Or my light. My light looks very yellowy, and I'm not sure why that is. Hang on. Let me look over here. Let me see if I can reach the setting back here and adjust this. There's something. There's something. That's yellow. That's white. It's a little brighter. Let's see what that does, huh? Shall we see? Is that any better? Slightly better. Nothing like adjusting equipment during the show. It's still yellow. It's not for a second, then it's back. All right. Hey, Randall Flagg, good to see you. Welcome into the program. And so let's jump. I wanted to do something different because it's Friday night. I wanted to get into something a little bit. You know, I've got like this little book that I dug out of a box of mine, The Teachings of Buddha. I wanted to see, what did Buddha have to say? But we're not going to do that right now. I've got that out. I have other things sitting all over my desk here, things I'd like to get into. And I've got poetry books over there. I don't know if you're into I go to Scotty's show because he reads poetry. Maybe you don't come here for that reason. But I love poetry. I love good poetry. And I've got some great poetry up there. I might read a poem before we get into it. How about that? How about I do that? Everybody sit there. I'm going to step over here and I'm going to grab a book. How about that? Let's see what we got here. We got a little, I think I got Yeats over here. I've also got Shakespearean poems. I've got world's modern Irish poetry. We could take a look at that, huh? How about that? Let's see what this says. Well, I've also got, I thought that was my Yeats book. It is not. So here we go. How about a little poetry for the soul? Randall Flagg says, Dead Poets Society. Something like that, yeah. Let's see. This is a book. I've had this for years. Modern Irish Poetry, an anthology. And I used to have some good stuff marked in here. Oh, here. That is. Why do I have that marked? Holy cow. That is a business card of mine from 1995. Look at that. It's marked in there. 3 Celts and Company. That was our little company where we sold Irish, Scottish, Welsh, English goods at heritage shows. We wore our kilts. We sold swords. We sold T-shirts. We did all that kind of stuff. 3 Celts and Company. That's marking something here. Let's see. Which one is it marking? Herbert Street Revisited. Something else marked in here too. With another card of mine. Let's see. That doesn't look like anything. I don't know why I had that marked. That was like 30 years ago. It's hard to believe. You ever do that? You go, wow. I know we talk about this stuff every now and then on this show, but the passage of time is incredible. Because I think of things and I see these cards marking this. Oh, 3 Celts and Company. We were just doing that business 30 years ago. So 29 years ago, actually. So see what else I've got in here that I had marked. Because I haven't picked up this book. This is just impromptu. I've got this one where this card is marking this. Let's try this. I have no idea what poem this is, what it says, but let's give it a shot, shall we? Here, listen, put on your poetry ears. This is Irish poetry. This is called One of the Boys. Our youth was gay but rough, much drink and copulence. You know what? It's dark. It's so bright on the computer, but it's so dark when I read. Let me try that again. Our youth was gay but tough, much drink and copulence. If that seems not enough, blame our miseducation in shabby border houses, lips covered lips, and in our wild carouses, there were companionships. Cheap and mundane, the strong of all that we remember, in August, dance hall petting, cinemas in December. Now middle-aged, I know, and do not hide the truth. Used or misused years go and take all kinds of youth. How appropriate this poem is for what I had just said. We test the foreign scene or grow too fat in banks. Salesmen for margarine, soldiers in tanks. The great careers, all tricks. The fine arts, all my arse. Business and politics, a crude farce. Though fear of getting fired may ease and work is hatred, less we are tired, and incapacitated on golf courses, in bars, crutched by the cash we earn. We think of nights in cars with energy to burn. Okay. It sounds choppy because I'm having a hard time seeing it in this light. I'd have to bring up all my house lights. I'll read one last small one. It's called From the Irish. From the Irish. If Niall was here. So, I'm only here for Scotty's cleavage. There it is. You're here for the right show, Travis Thorpe. Look on, gaze with your eyes. All I got's a scar. Look at that. Look at that. Boom. Big, badass scar. There's your cleavage. There's your cleavage. It goes from down here all the way up. If the light catches it right, it goes all the way up here. There's your cleavage. I was cleaved. So that's all I got for you, Travis, without money. All right, let me read this last one. It says, it's called From the Irish. Most terrible was our hero in battle blows, hands without fingers, shorn heads and toes were scattered that day. There flew and fell from astonished victims' eyebrow, bone, and entrail, like stars in the sky, like snowflakes, like nuts in May, like a meadow of daisies, like butts from an ashtray. Familiar things you might brush against or tread upon in daily round were glistening red, with the slaughter of the hero caused. Though he had gone by proxy, his bomb exploded, his valor shone. It's a little IRA in there, huh? So those were poems by, it was one particular author, James Simmons, Irish, of course. And I don't think I have anything else in here to. There's some good poetry in here, but I just saw a line. Ah, may he love me. What is the Virgin Mary now to do? There's some good poems in here. We'll do that another time. That was impromptu. I thought we'd just do something a little different than just digging into the JINN all of a sudden. It's like, hi, welcome to the show. Let's get serious. So I didn't want to be so serious to start with, but here we go. Let's get serious now. And Randall Fly, I like butts. I like Irish butts, and I cannot lie. I got one thing I want to show you. It's right here. I pulled this out of an old pocket. It is it's a fortune cookie message from my local Chinese place. And it says, mistakes are the portals of discovery. Mistakes are the portals of discovery. Take that one and do something with it. Let's get into the JINN. I would love to have a JINN encounter, but I say that, and I've said that very carefully. I say it out loud for the radio show. They always say, be careful what you wish for, because you may not like that encounter. Now, I say I will always add this caveat. If I'm going to have a JINN encounter, I want it to be a nice one. I don't want to have a bad JINN encounter. I don't want to have a mean JINN encounter. If I was to meet a JINN, I would like to meet him for esoteric reasons, to learn, to hear what he has to say. To say, this is interesting. Would a JINN, how would they appear? Would they appear as spirits to us? Would they appear? Travis, what do you think if you're still sitting out there? Love your opinion on that. Would they appear to us in spirit? Would they appear to us because they can take a human form? Could he be just somebody that walks in the room? Says, hey, I'm a JINN. You rang? You want to talk to me? You want a piece of me? So I would definitely like that experience, only from the point of view that I want to know something I don't know. And I don't want to know it to lead to my decapitation or him eating my flesh or something like that. Something bad and spooky and icky and crappy. I want to meet another being like that. Just like some people say, I'd like to meet an alien, or I'd like to see a ghost. And I've seen plenty of ghosts. So I always thought this would be an interesting experience. JINN have been known to show themselves as animals, often black, says Sarah. Did I just see there was a black cat the other day? Well, Oscar was my black cat. He's gone now, of course. A couple of months now. But JINN have been known to show themselves as animals. That's interesting. And so I put that out there to the universe, only that I would enjoy. Okay, I want to enjoy the experience. I don't want the experience to be something that leaves me with some kind of PTSD if it doesn't kill me. And I want it to be something that is worthwhile, something I learn from, something that I can do to say I've touched that other side, that diaphanous, and learn something from it. But we're looking more into, so the talk of the JINN, by the way, is just something that to me is incredibly interesting, because they're beings that we will say we believe exist. But like ghosts, for many of us, it's like, well, I haven't seen one, so I don't know. I think they exist. I do. I believe the Fae exist. I believe the fairy folk, the elementals, a lot of the ancient gods exist. Some believe the jinn can influence dreams. There you go, Sarah. You know, I wanted to mention this dream the other night. The first time I went to Egypt, it was an interesting dream. It was, I was going to meet John Ward over there, and we were going to go do a research trip for our book, The Exodus Reality. And a day or two before I left on the trip, I had a dream that John was there in his fedora and his tweed coat, and I had my fedora and my navy blue shirt and scarf like I always wore over there. And we came up to an old temple that was like, think of Indiana Jones when they went into the Well of Souls and they tip over the big statue and they crash through the stone wall. And then you see from the outside, the stone getting pushed out. And and they come out. It looked like that wall from the exterior. And we're looking through that hole, and then we're feeling around the edges of the block, and then John finds it, goes, oh, it's a door. And he opens the door, and we walk into this 4,000-year-old ruin. And what's inside? But a set of glass doors, and we go through them, and we're in a gift shop. Egyptian cups, mugs, t-shirts, artifacts, stuff like that. And we just wandered around, and it was like nothing was out of the ordinary for that. And we're like, oh, it's a gift shop. Cool. And then I woke up. So that's the dream I remember having before I left for Egypt. A good 13 years ago now. So I think it was 13. Well, was it 2013? So 11 years ago. So there you go. The Egyptian gift shop. And I did come back with a couple of souvenirs. So my Egyptian mugs. When Rainey would get mad, you know what she would do to me? She would just look at me, standing in the kitchen, reach out to my Egyptian mug, whoop, all went on the floor. It cracked. So I lost a couple of my Egyptian mugs that way. Oh, well. Oh, and by the way, one other thing before I get started. I can't make a big announcement of this particular project I'm working on yet because I don't know if I have it. But here in our little town in Somerset, there's a committee that is looking to do a mural on one of the exterior wall of an old building here in town. And it would be right down the main strip, which doesn't last very long in Somerset. There's not much here in downtown Somerset. Couple of buildings, couple of gas stations, 18 bars, and a liquor store. Oh, and a hardware store. But on this old building, it's 52 feet long, 22 feet tall. And so I did a drawing for this. And I was going to show you the drawing just because I'm fun. It was fun for me. I finished it this afternoon. This is what I am submitting for my submission. And if you're just listening on the radio, you can't see this. Hop quick over to YouTube. I didn't stumble on the Holy Grail in the gift shop, Sarah. Sad to say. But this is the pencil sketch I did. And it's got from left to right. I've got, some of this is just roughed in very quickly. And it'll look different when it's, of course, color and painted on a wall. But the two little figures to the far left are Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the Girl Boy Scouts, and then the American flag in the upper left corner. And then the Civil War general there with the axe over his shoulder. That is General Samuel not Harrington, it's Harriman. He was the founder of Somerset just before the Civil War. And he had started they were lumberjacking and also built a sawmill here. And so I've got him in there. And then in the background, you see a farm as we're moving to the right. And down below, there's a river that goes the whole rest of the way, still shallows of a river. You see a couple of people, modern day inner tubing. Somerset is known for its inner tubing down the Apple River. And up above them, I've got a voyageur and his wife, both French. There were French colonists here that settled in Somerset back in the 1700s. And she's carrying their baby. And then to the right of them, you see a big birch bark canoe. of the St. Croix Chippewa or Ojibwa tribe, and they're here. There was actually not far from here, just a few miles away on the St. Croix River, which Somerset doesn't run right up to the St. Croix, but it's just a hop, skip, and a jump. The Apple River comes off the St. Croix, and the St. Croix divides Minnesota from Wisconsin. That there was a big battle there in 1770, I think it was. Two tribes, the Fox and the St. Croix Chippewa, Ojibwa. And the Ojibwa won and pretty much wiped out the Fox and then integrated the rest of them in. So I've got them in their big canoe going down the same river, and the birch trees right in front there, and then some birds in the background, so on and so on. And then Somerset, I've just drawn that in. That would be, I would set that type a little better and project it up there to paint it on. Thank you, sir, and thank you, everybody. Commercial, 2 of them. Yeah, how about that? So what theme did they want? They wanted something that pushed Somerset, Wisconsin. And all of these topics were kind of brought up. So I did this composition for that reason. And if you look at General Harriman, way over on the left again with the hatchet or the axe over his shoulder, that character right there on the wall would be 20 feet tall. That gives you an idea of the scale of this thing. So he'd be 20 feet tall. And so this would be a really fun project to work on. So knock on wood, I hope I get it. So I wanted to share that with you just because it's drawing. It's what I do. All right, let's get back into the JINN. And let's see what we can come up with. Thank you, Susie Q. So if they go with your version, you would have to paint it. Yes, I would. I would take this and refine it a little bit. I'd project it up on the wall. And at night, I'd have to go out there with big projection equipment and project that up and trace it onto the wall and take it from there. So should take a project like this would take me end to end a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, depending on, getting up there, painting, scaffolding, all of that stuff. Now, the JINN, we kind of left off talking about the JINN in different parts, just origins. And I wanted to get into Islam because Islam is really where it's at when you come to the JINN. They're the ones who conceive. They didn't conceive of the JINN, but they took on the JINN and they wrote more about the JINN than anyone else, and it became part of their culture. There were more ancient form of the JINN that existed prior to Islam taking them on. But in Western Arabia, where Islam was born, one of the many roles of the JINN was to inspire poets, artists, and soothsayers. So poets writing poetry, artists doing their art, soothsayers being the fortune tellers of their day. Prophets. Poetry was a particularly popular oral art amongst the people of Arabia, and the ability to recite beautiful poetry to foretell the future was thought to be a sign of being possessed by JINN, and not necessarily always in a negative sense of being possessed. Even madmen were afforded special protected status by the Arabian tribes because they were thought to be majin. Majnun, I guess it is. Majnun. Majnun is the way it's spelled in English, or jinn possessed. And as the historian Al-Tabari relates, the prophet himself originally feared that his revelations might not be divine at all, but rather the work of jinn. And despite his initial doubts, the prophet was persuaded by his wife, Kadia, and her cousin, Waraka, among others, that his revelations were divinely inspired. And throughout his life, hey, Terry Pitts, good to see you over there in the chat room. Nice to have you in here. Sarah Youssef says, ethereal creativity, exactly. That's what makes me miss Uncle Dave, says Sarah. Was it the muraling? or the artistic part of Uncle Dave. So throughout his life, the prophet Muhammad we're talking about here remained suspicious of poets who exercised great influence among the tribes. Oh, by the way, in speaking of the prophet Muhammad, I was looking through some things on YouTube the other day, and I saw this animated film, and I thought it was a trailer. It looked pretty good in the miniature. I didn't know what it was. It was called Bilal, Bilal. And so I called it up, and it was an entire movie. And it was interesting. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched snippets of it. But Bilal is somebody who was supposedly inspired by Muhammad took a great liking to him, and he's a historical figure. So it's very interesting. I'd never seen a movie that was done as an specifically Islamic cultural piece, and I thought it was interesting. Sarah, you're saying, is it about the movie Bilal or something else? So you might want to look that up, Bilal. It looked very interesting. And by the way, it had great battle scenes in it. And it was not, it's made for kids, but it's not. It was very violent, a little bloody even. You saw guys running guys through with swords, cutting off the legs of horses to topple a charging army. It was all there. So, but the animation was really good. It had that kind of Prince of Egypt type of look about it. And I think that might have been the reason they did it that way, to be in that same genre. Anyway, it was very good from what I could see. So, but it wasn't, the philosophy. I will be very honest. And Sarah, you can hear this too. You know me. I never used to be. Is the word prejudice? Does that fit here? Against Islam. It was never a problem for me. As a matter of fact, Rainey and I at one point said, man, this sounds like a great lifestyle. And this was before 9/11. This is way back in the early 2000s. And no, I take that back. This is after 9/11, in the early 2000s. And no, it was before. I'm trying to place the date of this. It would have been right around before or right around after. But what 9/11 did for me, and what the extremists did for me, it piqued my prejudicial juices. It piqued my bigotry. And I will admit, to this day, I still have some of that. I have many friends who are Islamic, from Egyptian to Sarah here in the chat room, to other friends of mine that I have no problem with what they believe. But when you take me out of the context of being one-on-one with somebody I know or like, it has been problematic for me over the years, because everything the world has been exposed to since 9/11 is the terrorism, is the bombs, is the killing people, is the, now Hamas and Hezbollah and all of this stuff. It piques the bias in me, piques the, and I'll be honest about that. If that's something I need to work on, I'll work on it. Maybe the bias I have is against the extremist, and it just filters over into the good folk as well. So I'll leave that right there. So there was one poet, Hassan Ibn, I think you said IBN, Hassan Ibn Thabit. He died in 665, but he won Muhammad's favor by using his poetic skills in competition against the bards of other tribes and on behalf of the prophet's mission. And he became known as the poet of the prophet. And Hassan claimed he first acquired his poetic talent in his home city of Yathrib, later called Medina. And when a female jinn accosted him in the streets, she knocked him down, pressed upon his chest, forcing him to recite 3 verses of poetry. And throughout his life, Hassan maintained that his poetry was jinn inspired. The Prophet disagreed, asserting that Hassan derived his inspiration from Allah. And the earliest Muslim interpretations of the jinn regarded them as having free will, like humans, able to choose between good and evil. The Quran itself has a chapter devoted to these spirit beings, Surah 72, Al-Jinn. This surah begins by mentioning a group of jinn who listened to the recitation of the Quran and decided to accept Islam. They said, "We have really heard a wonderful recital. It gives guidance to the right. We have believed therein, and we shall not join in worship any gods with our Lord." And so an ancient mosque in Mecca is dedicated to the jinn who accepted the Prophet's message. Masjid al-Jinn, the Mosque of the Jinn. And it's either the locale where the jinn actually listened to the Prophet recite the Quran, or the place where he received the revelation of the surah called Al-Jinn. And Sir Richard F. Burton, old adventurer from the 19th century, visited the mosque during his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1853. He wrote this. He said, "Descending a flight of steps for this mosque, like all ancient localities at Mecca, is as much below as above ground. We entered a small apartment containing water pots for drinking and all the appurtenances of ablution. And in it is shown the Mauza al-Khat, the place of the writing, where Muhammad wrote a letter to Abu Masud, I think it is, after the homage of the jinns. A second and interior flight of stone steps led to another diminutive oratory where the Prophet used to pray and receive the Archangel Gabriel." That is what Sir Richard Burton had to say. Now, these jinn made a commitment to monotheism, which is the core of Islam. Other Quranic passages indicate that the jinn had heard earlier revelations, such as that of Moses and the Trinitarian doctrine of Christianity. And for Muslim, the beings that we call jinn, however they may have been conceptualized, are an integral and ever-present part of the language and theology of their faith. And the existence of these creatures is assumed and reiterated in numerous places in the Quran. And the book at its very outset calls Allah Rabb al-Alamin, Lord of the worlds, understood from the earliest days of Islam to mean all possible worlds that could exist, including the worlds of humans, of jinn, and of heaven. And the Quran often mentions mankind and the jinn together as the two types of creatures capable of receiving and accepting or rejecting the divine message. And Muhammad, as founder of the faith, regarded the reality of the jinn, as did his compatriots, as commonplace and indisputable, just the same way Christians would look at angels and demons and say these things exist without question. And this is how Muhammad saw it. And this is how it was passed down into Islam. The hadiths, or the recorded sayings in the traditions of the Prophet and his circle, mention jinn and their activities on numerous occasions, as routinely as they mention the existence and the deeds of humans. God of the multiverse, says Sarah. That's a good way to put that. The God of the multiverse. So Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, who lived from 810 to 870 AD, was one of the greatest and most reliable compilers of hadiths. And his multi-volume collection of carefully culled and attested accounts dating from the time of the Prophet, some 2 centuries earlier, is called Al-Sahih, the complete, if I'm pronouncing that right, Sahih. And Al-Bukhari's hadiths involving jinn are generally regarded as the most authoritative accounts on the topic of the jinn. Now that's something I want to get and read. I want to see what he had to say 1,500 years ago about the jinn. So some of the most popular hadiths are those of the Prophet's companion, I have not pronounced this word out loud yet. Huraira. Abu Huraira. Herrera, maybe? Hurayarah. He narrated more than 5,300 incidents from Muhammad's life. And in one of these, the Prophet is quoted as saying that a big ifrit, or jinn demon, came to him, the Prophet, one night and tried to interrupt his prayers. But Muhammad overpowered him. Muhammad said, I wanted to fasten him to one of the pillars of the mosque so that all of you could see him in the morning. The Prophet, however, relented and sent the defeated Ifrit away, humiliated. Now, keep in mind, we listen to that and we go, oh, did that really happen to Muhammad? Remember the story of Jacob wrestling the angel of the Lord. It says that the angel of the Lord came down and wrestled Jacob, and he wrestled with him all night long. And it said that Jacob was actually winning, just like Muhammad did here with the jinn. Yet it says the angel of the Lord reached, and it's really obscure language in the book of Genesis. It says he reached beneath his thigh and dislocated his hip, or something to that effect. And the pain from that made Jacob stop, and the angel of the Lord fled and left. And keep in mind that the term angel of the Lord, when translated from the Hebrew, was always an incarnate version of God himself. The angel of the Lord, when you see that mentioned in Old Testament scripture, is God, very God. Some would say in Christianity that it was what they called a Christophany, an early pre-incarnation of the Christ or the kinsman redeemer, or good enough to say an incarnate in flesh version of God was the angel of the Lord. Oh, that's good to hear, Sarah. She says my pronunciation isn't too far off. So, and by the way, in this thing where I mentioned, one of the first times I really encountered somebody who was Islamic, I was working as I had a job as a maitre d' in a restaurant, really high-class steakhouse in Minneapolis. I had to wear a suit and tie and the little silk and all that, and very expensive place. And I worked there for a few months, and it was like my quick trip job, because I was still doing back then what I do now. Just like, I got to pick up some extra dough, so I took that job. And one of our waiters was from Iran or Iraq, I can't remember. And he came here as a little boy, and now he's in his late 20s. And we were talking one day, and he talks just as good as English as I do. And he was talking like this. We're talking away. And this was not right after, it was a few years after 9/11. And he said, he says, as we were talking, he said, well, I came from Iraq and all that. And he says, before you even ask, he says, yes, I'm Muslim. He says, but I want to tell you, I am not ISIS. I do not agree with what they do. He says, he says, you don't have to agree with what they are doing, the extremists, to be Islamic. He says, I am Islamic, but I do not follow that path whatsoever. And he actually mock spit on the floor. He spit. He says, if I could spit in here on this beautiful carpet, I would. Yeah, and now, every time I had encountered somebody who was Muslim after 9/11, if we got to talking and they were here in America and so on, he said, hey, I am. And I didn't know anything about the jinn back then, all right? I asked him. But, and of course, all my friends in Egypt, my archaeologist friends, Momin Saad, and others who are Islamic, they will all say, oh, we are not at all in support of the Muslim Brotherhood, or we had a couple of them that were Muslim Brotherhood, but some that were, which is more or less a little more strict radical group of Islam in over in the Middle East. You still get that from time to time, Sarah says. And so they would all say, hey, I am Islam, but I am not extremist like that. I denounce that. So that was worth saying at this point. Some of the most popular hadiths had Muhammad's cousin, Ibn Abbas, relates an occasion when the prophet was preaching, and a barrier was suddenly and mysteriously created between the devils and the news from heaven. Previously, jinn had been able to eavesdrop on happenings in heaven and thereby acquire news of the future, which they could impart to soothsayers and other magicians. And without warning, this divine back channel was suddenly cut off, and the jinn lost one of their powers. And at the same time, fire was thrown down upon the jinn, perhaps a shower of meteorites. They soon discovered that the new barrier in heaven against their eavesdropping was the result of Muhammad's recitation of the Quran to his followers. And these jinn went to their fellows and told them about the wonderful recital and recital. As we saw a little earlier, I talked about these jinn embraced Islam and thus were no longer called devils. And this conversation among the jinn was subsequently revealed by God to Muhammad. So Abdurrahman ibn Auf, one of the earliest converts to Islam, related a tradition passed on by the reliable jurist and hadith transmitter Masruq ibn Ajda, there you go, that on the night the jinn heard Muhammad reciting the Quran, a tree informed the prophet about them. Now, what kind of tree it was and how the information was conveyed remains kind of a mystery. I think there's been speculation and it's been written about. But we do know that the prophet was something of an environmentalist in his own day. He had a fondness for trees, and he encouraged their planting, saying those who grew them would be rewarded in heaven. And by the way, let me just make a side note here. If you're a conservative politically, or you're GOP or Republican, it's often thought that Republicans, GOP, conservatives, libertarians, that we don't care as much about the environment as, and we, I say because I'm a conservative, that we don't care as much about the environment as liberals or progressives. And I would say au contraire. I grew up learning to be a conservationist. They taught us ecology. It was taught in school when I was in late grade school and early middle school in the late 60s, early 70s. And so you don't have to be it's not wrong-headed to be conservative or to be a good steward of your planet, of the things that God gave us. That's a good thing, and it's good to treat it well. What did JP say? Did I miss anything exciting? Everything here's exciting, brother. He said, I was at a wing function. Oh, yeah, you mentioned something about doing something like that this week. Daniel Craig in the chat room. Hey, Daniel. He says, I am fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Beetlejuice said that. There you go. So am I. I'm fiscally conservative. I tend to be socially liberal. or at least, let's put it this way, I am a social libertarian. I have always said I am a small c conservative with a libertarian bent, with a constitutionalist edge, and a bit of a Jeffersonian liberal, which is about as conservative as you can get. So there you go. That's what I am. I like to throw those labels out just to confuse the shit out of people. JP, did you wear the uniform? Asked Morgan Snow. So Teddy Roosevelt, says Sarah Yusuf. So the association of jinn with magic and fortune telling, it's an ancient linkage that predates Islam by millennia. And it survived the coming of the prophet, and in fact thrived for many centuries after the establishment of the faith. And so even the most illustrious of the early Muslims didn't find such a relationship surprising. For example, Abdullah ibn Umar, the caliph's son, the companion of the prophet, and a renowned jurist, he said that his father, Caliph Umar, once met a man who had been a foreteller, a soothsayer, or a predictor of the future. And before the coming of Islam, he met this man. And such foretellers, as we talked about already in this series, often claim to rely on the jinn for their predictions. Umar said to the man, "Tell me the most astonishing thing your female jinn has told you of." And the man replied, "One day while I was in the market, she came to me, scared, and said, 'Haven't you seen the jinn and their despair, and that they were overthrown after their defeat and prevented from listening to the news of the heaven, so that they stopped going to the sky and kept following camel riders,' in other words, Arabs?" Umar said, "He's right," and added, "One day, while I was near their idols, there came a man with a calf and slaughtered it as a sacrifice for the idols. An unseen creature shouted at him, and I have never heard harsher than his voice. He was crying, 'Oh, you bold evildoer, a matter of success, an eloquent man is saying, none has the right to be worshipped except you, O Allah.' On that, the people fled. But I said, 'I shall not go away till I know what is behind this voice.' And the cry came again, 'Oh, you bold evildoer, a matter of success. An eloquent man is saying, none has the right to be worshipped except Allah.' I then went away, and a few days later it was said, 'A prophet has appeared.'" And one of Muhammad's companions, particularly revered by today's Shiites, Jabir ibn Abdullah, recounts in a hadith how the prophet counseled people on ways of dealing with mischievous jinn. "Cover your utensils, and tie your water skins, and close your doors, and keep your children close to you at night, as the jinn spread out at such time and snatch things away." Wow, doesn't that sound like the Fae? Watch your children. Watch for changelings. Muhammad said, another account says that in this instance, the prophet used the word devils instead of jinn. So we got about 3.5 minutes left on radio, guys, radio audience. You can join us when we're done here over on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. Come on over and join the rest of the fellow Intrepids over in the chat room. You'll have a good time there. But according to Muhammad's third wife, Aisha bint, I wonder if that's where our term bint comes from. Oh, some watery bint with a sword. If you know what that's from. I'm sure Jason does. So Aisha bint Abu Bakr, who was the source of many hadiths about her husband. Some people asked the prophet about soothsayers. He said, "They are nothing." They persisted, saying, "Oh, Allah's apostle, some of their talks come true." Muhammad then replied, "That word which happens to be true is what a jinn snatches away by stealth from heaven and pours it into the ears of his friends, the foreteller. with a sound like the cackling of a hen. The soothsayers then mix that word 100 lies. And so the believers of Islam, jinn are just another type of creature created by Allah, along with angels, humans, animals, plants. And less exalted than angels, jinn rank above humans in some respects and below them in others. And as a result, jinn are often mentioned in the Quran in conjunction with humans. And Allah addresses or acts upon both men and jinn. And the word jinn and its variants occur at least 29 times in the Quran. And the word shaitan, which sounds very much like our word for Satan, doesn't it? Shaitan, and its plural occurs 88 times, as does the word angels, malaika, in Hebrew malachi, malachim. And so by comparison, the word land, or bar, B-A-R-R, appears 13 times in the Quran, and the word sea, bur, or bar, B-A-H-R, 33 times. There you go. I'm going to leave off with that for tonight for the radio audience. And we'll get back to this again next week. Wow, my lighting is really sad tonight. Sorry about that. Very yellow, very dim. I got to get my lights all hooked up that Uncle Dave gave me sooner or later here. So all of you who are listening by radio, we're going to take our leave of you. Come on over to the youtube.com/Scotty Roberts and join everybody else. In the meantime, live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid Radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep.
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. While that intro is a little bit too long, when I made it, I wanted to play that music out and show a little bit more of the logo and have it fade in. But we don't do fade ins because we're not pre-recording. I can't edit that in that way. We just play it and we pop right into the show. So welcome to the Captain's Cabin, everyone. This is the after show. It's like the cigarette at the end of a good sexual encounter. That's what this is. And this is the time when you can call into the show and we can talk. There's a link that is in the description below. We've already got Sarah Youssef is waiting in the wings. We'll bring her in a minute. Let me paste this link out there for anybody who wants to join us right here. You don't have to know how to talk real good. You can just come on. Yeah, I like to read because it makes me talk real good. So you can just come in and just chat. You can show your face if you want. That's okay. Look at me. I don't have any makeup on. So my nose is so red. Look at that. If I wore makeup, it wouldn't be red today. Not quite like that anyway. So I am going to go figure out what's going on with that. My doc doesn't know. I don't drink. Well, barely. You've seen me. The most I drink is on this show. And how often do I do that? We got St. Patty's Day coming up. I got to see if my son Sam is going to join us. Sam the leprechaun, if he's going to join us for St. Patty's Day. If you're listening, Sam, call me about that or call into the show. And so what the hell was I saying? So you can come and join us. Call us up. And it'll be fun to talk. Be fun to have new people. Some of you came in. I didn't see you come in. Fucking Kings OG. I remember you from somewhere. Unless it was a different name that's like yours. I can't remember who you are, if you've been here before, but thanks for being here. Good to see your comment. You said, how about the egregores? You're talking about the Gregory or the Genesis 6:1? The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and so were the heroes of old and the men of renown. That's speaking of the Gregory in the Hebrew. And they were the giants in the earth, a giant, figuratively, metaphorically speaking, the men of valor. And so, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. Hey, Kelly Bell, good to see you. JP, glad to have you. He says, I'll call in a few. Still driving. Let's bring in Sarah, though. Sarah, how you doing?
Hey, Scotty.
What's going on?
Well, I just wanted to say, thank you for, bringing up this topic. Usually, topics surrounding around Islam, especially, media topics, so like on YouTube, are hard to come by. Particularly,
when I was a kid, before all the stigma of 9/11, before all the stigma of terrorism, we didn't know anything about that when we were kids. We used to play Arabian Nights. We used to love Sinbad. I'm not talking the cartoon. I'm talking, the old Sinbad movies from the 60s, the 50s and the 60s. We used to love to watch that stuff and play Sinbad. And my mom made me a Sinbad-y type of a costume when I was in kindergarten and I ended up on Casey Jones, the kids' TV show. Got to be right around 1966 when that happened. But all that to say, that's trite little stuff to say that way. But we didn't know what Islam was, but we knew what the 1001 Nights were. We knew who Sinbad was. We know Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. All of that stuff, and what a glorious, when you look at Arabic culture and Islamic culture, dating back, you look at how colorful and rich it was. Now, like I talked the other night, Wednesday night, legalism in any religion is a tough pill to swallow, and I don't like legalism at all. Don't tell me how, teach me how I can worship God. Don't tell me how I should by this list, otherwise I'm out of God's will. That's what we talked about on Wednesday. And so Sinbad, Caroline Munro, swoon. I have to look up Caroline Munro. I'm trying to place her in my head now. Now, by Sinbad, Daniel, you're talking about, wasn't it not Gordon Scott? Gordon Scott was a Tarzan after Johnny Weissmuller. You remember those movies, by the way, Sarah?
I wasn't born yet, but I've seen some of them.
I wasn't born either. They were out in the late 30s and the 40s and stuff like that. So
yeah.
But I can't remember who played Sinbad in the old movies, but there was always, I know they had the Ray Harryhausen stop motion animation creatures in all of those. And so that was pretty cool stuff. Caroline Munro. I gotta just take a second. I gotta refresh my memory as to who she was and what she looked like. Oops. Caroline Munro. Well, there she is. For some reason I was going to think she's dead now, but no. Oh, you're talking. Some of these were movies in the 70s. It's 1973, The Golden Voyage of Sinbad. Movies like that. She was in that. It looks like Judd Hamilton. And others. She's an English actress. She's 75 years old right now. So, hey, there you go. So, yeah, she's hot for 75. How about that? Don't you hope somebody says that of you, Sarah, or even me? I think of that. Hey, when I'm 75, if somebody goes, hey, you're kind of hot.
Well, like
no reaction?
Well, like everything else in Islam, it's supposed to be about being in moderation.
Oh, yes, moderation. Hot can be moderate. Wow, here's a shot of Caroline Munro from the 1970s in the Sinbad movie. I would say that she was very fetching. Very fetching indeed. Thank you for that, Daniel Craig. I shall remember you in my will. So Caroline Munro, not Marilyn Monroe. Caroline Munro. I should just put her picture up so everybody gets a chance to see who I'm talking about. So
what I was saying was that,
yes, I did interrupt you. Sorry.
Yeah. Islam is a little bit not weird, but I mean, it takes a very strong stance of how the prophet and God is portrayed. So that's why you don't see it, in common media and documentaries. Like you don't see reenactment documentaries of the prophet.
Oh.
Which that's why I was saying a little earlier when you were saying that you saw a cartoon.
Oh yeah, now that's interesting because they didn't identify him as Muhammad, but this young man who it starts with he's a little boy, this Bilal, and I didn't watch the whole thing. I was assuming it was taking place in an Arabic country. It was beautiful. And then there was a scene I skipped way ahead just to see where it was going. Young man, and he meets an older man in the marketplace that looked very much lighter skinned Arabic. And this kid grew up and he was very dark skinned Arabic. And then I read somewhere about him afterwards that he was very dark skinned for an Arab. But the older gentleman was talking to him, and I read that it was Muhammad that inspired him, and he fought his way out of slavery. This guy, because
so kind of like a Spartacus scenario.
Yeah, very Spartacus is what I got from it. Kind of an Islamic or a Muslim or a Arabic Spartacus.
Right.
So now I assumed that was Muhammad. They did mention in the stuff that I read that it was Muhammad that inspired him. So I thought maybe that's the same guy. I wasn't sure.
I mean, it's all in the context. I mean, that's how
I suppose
the loophole.
Oh, there he is. Very clean shaven.
Yep.
Sa!
That's a little
That's
too
a little British.
Little British for my taste.
See the look of the army uniform with the brown leather bill and band, and all you would need is the little leather, what they call it, the little leather diagonal
brown belt.
Yes, and then of course the knee high boots, but it makes you want to come to a. I don't know if there was a term for it, but the jumping British salute, where they jump and the heels go click click, and the salute, we salute like this, now we're this way, but in the British it was sa. It's like snap. So that's what you made me want to do.
Jeez. Yeah.
Hey, you look good though.
Well, thank you.
It's a good.
I like to go to the Air Force's formal events wearing this. I'm their historian. It's like, hey, remember where you came from.
Right.
Some of them don't like to remember that or be reminded that they came from the Army.
Ah, yes.
So I have fun with it.
Yes. That's some of these guys who do the crossover, I was in the Army and then I joined the Air Force.
Yeah, exactly.
And after the Air Force, I went into the Marines, and it's like, wow, that's like identity crisis right there.
Right. You're talking about, you kind of mentioned with Islamic cultures and things like that. One of the things that has always stuck in my memory, both from Iraq and from Afghanistan, was the sound of morning and evening prayer being broadcast from one of the minarets. And there was something.
What's that, Sarah?
That's the azan. That's the azan when they're doing the call to prayer.
The call to prayer, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah. It's kind of a wild evening after we finished all the formalities. They were playing Crud, which is it's an Air Force game played on a table that is very much like a pool table, except it's missing two pockets, the side pockets. It's interesting, but it gets wild. So
since you're talking, just slight off topic with that, I'll just say Carolyn Monroe from the Sinbad movies in the early 70s.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Like I say, she was rather fetching.
But yeah, no, absolutely.
She reminds me a little bit of Sophia Loren.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little.
And she's 75 years old now. So she would have been about 23 to 25 years old in this picture for that movie. So there you go.
But call to prayer was something that always stuck in my memory, and I always enjoyed hearing it. There were a lot of off-color jokes thrown around about,
Sure.
especially in Afghanistan. Thursday was basically like, their Friday, was like their, Thursday was kind of the end of their week going into Friday, and they would have, and this is absolutely awful, but you have to think of cultural aspects with it, and they'd call it Man Love Thursday, because in Afghanistan, like all the men, you would see them holding hands and walking, and that's just a normal sign of friendship and care and respect.
Sure.
And things like that, and it's very alien to Western cultures.
I learned that in Egypt.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not something that's specific to Afghanistan. I just say it because I saw it the most there. And there were always jokes about it, but at the same time, it was kind of just a very, very interesting thing to kind of observe and be around and to hear and see. And there was a lot of stuff, and it's understandable to an extent why it all cropped up post 9/11.
Sure.
But there's a lot of interesting aspects to those cultures and to the culture that surrounds the faith and things like that. I wish people would take the time to separate the extremists from non-extremists and just learn, because there are similarities obviously between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. I mean, they're all Abrahamic traditions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's crossovers there, and you start to kind of realize, in a lot of ways, we're probably more similar than we realize.
I think so.
Yeah. So, and that's all I had to say about that.
That's all I have to say about that.
Well, I mean, even more extreme than holding hands, the whole kissing on cheek thing. You see that in Greek culture. You see that in Shakespearean culture. So I mean, it's not just that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it in the Islamic world, or even other major cultures. If you think of the Italians or whatnot, it's very communal in terms of your people around you, whether by blood or not, you're considered family. Like if we were living in the same area, in the same neighborhood, you would be still called Uncle Scotty.
Sure.
Right? We could say, even though we have no blood relation, until proven otherwise.
And some of that's a respect thing too. My Ukrainian stepfather, everybody we knew that was Ukrainian in Minneapolis area that was part of his church and that were immigrated from the Ukraine in the 50s. They were all our uncles and aunts. Everybody that was friends of my stepdad's were Uncle Leo, Uncle Boris, Uncle so on and so on and so on. So,
Uncle Boris.
Uncle Boris was cool.
Every time I hear Boris, I just think Boris and Natasha and
Boris and Natasha.
You get Moose and Squirrel.
Moose and Squirrel. Yes. Mr. Professor.
He says Mary and Joseph.
So, yes. So,
but yeah, I mean, on the whole 9/11 issue, I mean, those, even in my community, we were pissed off as well. It's not just the Americans,
But that never got any airtime.
Yeah.
It wasn't given airtime.
No. Right. It really wasn't.
Like now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I was saying is that, much like the planes were hijacked, our culture was hijacked.
Right.
As far as, the whole demonization thing. I mean, but that's been going on even, not to the extreme of 9/11, but even prior to that. I mean, prior to the Crusades. Like we were talking earlier about the name Belial.
Yes.
Bilal, Bilal, in the Christianity, there's a demon called Belial. So, I mean, it's told, the evolution of name and culture and,
yes,
it influences the culture of like what would we consider demonic. I mean, if you look at certain names of one god's demigods is another culture's demons.
Right.
But what sort of saddens me in a way, if you look at the context of the type of world, like at that time where, you know, the Quran was being revealed, it was a time of life where, you know, magic and, you know, the supernatural, they were commonplace in everyday life.
Right.
You know, you don't see that anymore. Even, you know, prior to the revelation of the Quran, you had demons. And people had their talismans, their evil eye. You know, they had things to ward off the evil eye.
Yep.
All that's kind of culture is kind of like not really lost nowadays. I mean, you don't really see that now in, you know, modern culture, where we have, you know, different explanations.
With a light over here that is...
Everybody just walked away.
I'm here. I'm right here. I'm just messing
Still
with
in the
light.
room. I'm just starting some water.
I thought while you're talking, I'll fix this light that's bugging me.
Well, you know, and the evil eye. I mean, I still have stuff that I got from the bazaars in Afghanistan. You know, that evil eyes all over it. You know, the talisman, and I mean, and it's what's interesting too is it's not just something that is, you know, that's not like an Islamic thing per se. That's a regional thing.
Yeah.
I dated a gal for a while. She lived in Chicago. She was first generation American, but her family was Armenian. Her you know, following the Armenian genocide in 1914, you know, her family had emigrated out of there, obviously, and you know, her mother's family had actually ended up in Israel, and her father's family had ended up in Beirut, I think is where he lived.
Lebanon.
Yeah, and so, you know, they had you would go to their house and you would, you know, see evil eye talismans and things like that and whatnot, and it was something that, you know, had stretched up even, you know, Armenia and Turkey and all of that. It's very much a regional kind of thing, and it's just carried on.
Yeah.
You know, even with, you know, the introduction of, you know, Christianity in some of the regions, Islam in some of the regions, things like that. They continue to carry certain traditions. Even
you can go to the South here, you know, regional in the United States, different parts of the country.
Yeah,
things like that. So.
Oh yeah, you kind of wish that people would stop and think about those things, like on an intellectual level, like, hold on, let's pump the brakes and just think about this for a second, you know?
Right.
But at the same time, people tend to kind of lizard brain it, if you will.
Sure.
And they, you know, they shy away from what isn't the norm for them. And they aren't always naturally curious about it. So
sure.
That's something I would love to see us do. Humanity, not just like Americans, but humanity, right?
Right.
Start instilling and developing, fostering that natural curiosity that we do have in general because we're intelligent beings. But, you know, to start fostering that again, and making it something that's more normal, more common.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't have much to add to that, to tell you the truth. I'm just kind of like you on this point, so. Yeah. And you know, not because of that in particular, but I see that we've our numbers have gone way low. I think so I'm probably going to start wrapping the show up, even though it's a little bit earlier than normal. And I only do that because I've had a fairly strict policy about dropping under 10 live people in the chat room. And then I'll start to move it out.
I'm a little curious.
Yeah.
Little worried actually. Has anybody seen anything out of the professor? He hasn't joined us.
I haven't seen him in a few weeks.
Well, last time I saw, he's been doing a lot of other podcasts. I think he's even doing
other people's podcasts.
Yeah. So.
I was just afraid my ribbing him and side jokes and things like that had finally just scared him off, which is
I wondered about that too. There were times where, I didn't call on him. I saw him in the thing and I'm going, hey, we're shutting down. We're not bringing you in. If I bring you in, I'll be here another half an hour.
Right.
So, and I thought, and then he wouldn't show up. So, no, I think he's just busy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I check in on him once in a while. He's been having fun on other people's podcasts. So I think he's having one on Sunday. So Sunday talking about frequency and vibration or something like that. So
yeah,
go attend that. But yeah, everybody's
I like all of that stuff. I got to tell you, after a while, even the stuff like that I enjoy talking about, I get tired of. It's like, okay, I got to shift gears now.
Yeah.
And that's like, even with the JINN, I've done 7 shows on it now. And I could do 100 more to get through all the history stuff. But I think then we become the JINN show. And I don't want to be the JINN show. I want to talk about the JINN, then I want to move on to something else.
Right.
So
keep rolling. I just want him to elaborate, clarify on the, what it is exactly that the thing that's coming. The crazy.
Right. The reset.
The reset. It's always so nebulous.
Professor, you're gonna have to tell us. You're gonna have to come on the show and just tell us. Not tonight, because I've already started to call it. If I bring you in now, we'll be here 2 hours.
What are you talking about?
The Great Reset, when he talks about that, what his definition of all that is. And
okay.
The professor, as much as I love him, you ask him to define what the reset is, just take a drink and sit back and let him talk. And because he'll go 2 hours. And then he'll make it through a point. So he's very detailed in all.
And we say that out of love, Professor.
It's all out of love, Professor.
Don't think it's otherwise. If I wasn't ribbing you about things, that's when you got to be worried.
Yes. So here we are. I'm gonna give it a call for a Friday night. I thought maybe that would stoke the fires a little bit, and we haven't gained any numbers. So,
well, I left the uniform on. I thought that would keep people in.
It's not the what? Yeah, it's not that I don't mind talking to 5 people, but of all of us.
All the ladies went quiet, so
I saw that. So, be something about that. They're all oohing and awing over Jason.
God, I hope not. If they are, they need to go back to their optometrist and get their prescription checked.
All right, you two. Let's
You're doing it the other eye this week, Scotty?
Thursday of next week.
Oh, okay.
So Thursday next week.
You'll have to find the eye patch.
I found it. Oh, look at this. This is Uncle Dave's old eye patch for his Captain Morgan. It goes on like this. You put it on and you tie it. You tie it in the back. And it's an ambidextrous eye patch because this is the eye that's done, but I could just very easily just move it over here, flip it around and move it over.
You need one that's like a brown leather with a couple of little like jewels encrusted in the center, like one-eyed really and Paguni.
Yeah, I like just I'm a minimalist when it comes to my eye patches. I like so.
Eye patch minimalism.
More made for the right eye. But would I? Remember that old joke?
Would I?
the guy that was he was a hair lip. And Everybody looked down on him. He couldn't get any attention from the girls. He couldn't get a date. And so he got talked into going to the dance. And he couldn't find a date. He went to the dance, and he's feeling a little forlorn over there in the, what do they call that? The stag line. And there's a young woman who happened to in town that was I'm sorry, I messed that up already. He had a wooden eye. That's what it was. And the girl was a hair lip. That's what it was. She couldn't get any dates either. And they ended up in the same stag line. And
The wallflowers.
Yes.
And she looks at him and she says, "Would you like to dance with me?" And you know what's coming.
What up?
Yeah, it was the other way around. He asked her, "Would you like to dance with me?" And she said, "Would I?" And he goes, "Hair lip." So there you go. Sorry. Long way around to get to the punchline on that one.
It's all right. We got there. We all enjoyed a good laugh. That's all that matters.
Thank you. That's all that matters. Yeah, I haven't seen Matthew Sainsbury in a long time. Don't know what happened to Matthew. So, found another show.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
So,
You know, we could do a show one time on all of the amazing honeypot text messages that I get.
what? Like what? Give us a sample.
Well, today, for instance, I got some sort of message about, hi, and then I'm like, who's this? And they're like, oh, hey, this is so and so, and I was trying to get a hold of my friend such and such, and
trying to get a hold of my friend Shirley. Are you Shirley?
And then insert pulled from the internet, standardized, attractive woman who's clearly of some sort of foreign ilk, and am I pretty? And today,
would you like to see my picture though, even though you're not Shirley.
Yeah, exactly. And today with today's message, I was like, look, I get it. You're some dude or dudette just trying to do a job and trying to whatever. But look, man, I regularly entertain myself by watching IDF combat footage coming out of Gaza Strip and Ukrainians shoot Russians in the face. And quite frankly, I've thrown a Chinese company out of my own town that was connected to the CCP. I am not the guy.
You don't want
to talk to me. Sorry.
Yeah.
And didn't get any more text messages after that.
No more text messages.
If the gal in the photo happens to be of an Asian persuasion, I typically let them go on a couple of messages until they ask me for a photo, and then I send them a photo of Tank Man, the guy that stood down the column of T-72s at Tiananmen Square, and they usually don't message back after that. That's.
By the way, whatever happened to him?
I don't know.
Hear what happened to him, or did he just disappear out of life?
Kind of disappeared out of history, other than a photo of him standing down that column of tanks.
Would it be safe to assume he might not be alive anymore?
It'd be a reasonable assumption. Now I kind of want to go look it up.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Tank Man?
I'm curious. We could do it right now. Whatever happened to Tank Man? Tank Man temporarily stops the advance of a Type 59 tank on June 5th of 1989. That's how long ago that was, brother.
By the way, Beijing. Audience that's still listening, the Type 59 is a clone of a T-72 because that's what.
Well, I was going to say that next, but you stole my thunder now. So, a day after Chinese military killed at least hundreds, if not thousands, of demonstrators in Beijing, In 1989, a wiry man in a white shirt stepped in
Carrying
front of a line of
groceries.
moving tanks near Tiananmen Square. Became one of the most famous protesters of the 20th century. 24 years later, his identity is still a mystery. He is called simply Tank Man. Today, on the anniversary of the crackdown, this is an article from a few years ago, obviously. On the anniversary, Chinese bloggers paid homage to him with imitations of the face-off. And so...
How crazy is that to go down in history for something like that?
I know. Standing in front of a tank. Speculation can, I suppose, it'd be like standing in front of, an army of chariots thousands of years ago, but they would have run you over. So for some reason, they did not run him over.
Yeah.
Speculation continues to circulate about Tank Man's fate. Thousands of Chinese nationals were detained and imprisoned for their involvement. Some of them kept in jail for almost their entire lives. Others were executed. No one has been able to determine whether Tank Man was among them.
Like, I wonder with that guy. I wonder with that guy if it's like, okay, was he actually like protesting, or had he just had the lousiest day? Right?
He's like, please run me over.
Shitty day at work.
Or he's nearsighted. He was nearsighted, and he was like, I'm waiting for a bus.
Sure, but like in my head, I wonder though. It's like he's got his groceries. He's going home. Like, I'm gonna have my whatever I bought that I'm really looking forward to. And now I've got this column of tanks. Boom. There we go. That's the straw that broke the camel's back. He didn't even care about the politics. Like, I can't help but wonder.
It's like Michael Douglas in that movie Falling Down. I just wanted a cheeseburger.
Right. Exactly.
The last straw.
You would think that considering we have cell phones everywhere now and everybody has a smartphone, somebody would spot him or recognize him, and then be all over.
Well, they say
internet.
They wonder. They just say he disappeared. Nobody knows if he was arrested. Nobody did he slip back into? Did he just step out from in front of the tank and slip into the crowd?
He was carrying groceries, I can tell you that much. or some sort of plastic bag with something from a store. Like, he just looked so frustrated in all of his body language. It's like, all right, either this guy is the most like based baller dude stepping out of the crowd and stopping this column of tanks, or he's literally, this is the pinnacle of his bad day and he's just had enough. Like, one or the other. That's all it could be.
Yep.
But I mean, he didn't say anything on what he was protesting for, or he was just
no. He just started walking across the road.
It says right here. It says it's been said that he may. This is how they close the article. It's also possible the Tank Man may have been simply a regular citizen in Beijing who had seen or heard of the brutal government crackdown that left students, workers, children, doctors, and passersby dead, many of them shot in the back. According to film footage and witnesses, he was walking alone along the 6-lane avenue, holding a bag of shopping when he saw the tanks and decided to step out in front and do something. And that was it. And that's all we will ever know of him, apparently. So there you go.
Pretty crazy.
I mean, yeah, it's its own version of being viral back in the day. The out of context symbolism.
Right.
Yeah. The rumor that he was run over, said Morgan Snow.
Yeah, I heard that rumor too, but I don't remember seeing any follow-up stuff with it saying.
I don't either.
Certainly wasn't.
There were no soldiers seemed to run out and grab him. Nobody.
Right, him and the tank commander got into an argument. Like they had a heated discussion. Like, he was sitting there and he was just like, and the tank commander's up in the hatch and he's like, "What are you doing?"
Get to move. I can't speak Chinese, but I can tell what this means.
Right. Get out of here.
So, all right. Guess what? That's what we're doing with this show.
Getting out of here.
Get out of here.
Making like a tree and getting out of here.
That's right. Getting like a tree and getting out of here. Sarah, see you later.
All right.
Have you here today.
Later, sir.
All right, brother. See you later.
Alrighty, sounds good.
Maybe Sunday morning. We'll see what's going on.
I'll be around.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
See
Later.
ya. Everybody else that's left in the chat room anyway, we're going to get out of here. It's been a fun show. It's been a fun day. It's been a fun week. You got Saturday and Sunday coming up. We'll be back here on Sunday and do a little Sunday morning coffee. Very informal. So come dressed to the nines for radio. And so that's all I got. I got nothing more. So everybody else, everybody that's out there, live long and prosper.